Politicking. I'm Larry King, and joining me is the spiritual activist, lecturer, best-selling author, and now a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, Marianne Williamson. She made her announcement in Beverly Hills this past Sunday, running as an independent. She'll run against a lifelong congressman, Henry Waxman. He's been there for 38 years. Why, Marianne?
Well, I think there's a new conversation that Americans are having about our country and about life and about the world. And this conversation is saturating so many corners of our society, but it hasn't been able to crash through the ramparts of the political system. And so the thoughts that dominate our politics today are calcified thought forms. They don't allow in the kind of thinking that is necessary to move us forward. And so what we have is a diminishing democratic franchise. And I think that it's going to be people coming from outside the two parties. The two parties certainly have their role to play. But I think what we need now is the voices of the American people, unfiltered by the kind of chokehold that the two parties have. So I think...
So what is your platform?
Well, my platform has to do with what I see as the main issue underlying all the other issues. People I talk to are concerned about the environment. We're concerned about the corruption of our food supply. We're concerned about income inequality. We're concerned about high mass incarceration rates, child poverty, and so forth. But there's an issue that underlies all that, the cancer underlying all the cancer. And that has to do with the fact that we've become a legalized, corrupted system. The money that influences our politics, those with financial leverage, are able to wield political influence so much disproportionately to what the average citizen can now wield, that we've really become a government of the people, by the people, for the people, dismantled, and we've become a government of a few of the people, by a few of the people, and for a few of the people. Between the money and the politicized gerrymandering, what we've got is a crisis of democracy itself.
How do you change that, though? You have a Supreme Court ruling that said corporations are people, and they can give any amount they wish, as can labor unions, and congressmen get those funds. How do you change that?
Well, the founders did not create the Supreme Court to lord over us. The American people can still override Citizens United with a constitutional amendment. That won't be easy, but it took an amendment to abolish slavery. It took an amendment to give women suffrage. It will take a constitutional amendment to get the money out of politics, to pave the way for real public funding of our political campaigns. There is a group, American Anti-Corruption Act, so there are interim measures that we can take, but we need to get this conversation going about a constitutional amendment. Nothing less will ultimately suffice.
You said that the government has lost its, I want to get this right, you say it's lost its ethical center. What do you mean?
Well, by ethical center, I believe that the ethical center that it's lost is that there are some things more important than money. As long as you have your organizing principle is economic, short-term economic gain, as is in a corporation, that's fine within certain purviews of business functioning. But that should not be your bottom line in running a country, because without ethics, that means that you're never going to say, well, what about the health of a child? What about the health of the environment? What about the health of people? So as long as you're putting economic values in front of humanitarian values, you have lost your ethical center. And I believe government, which in so many cases has become handmaidens because of the corrupt influence of money, government has become handmaiden to the same corporate order that does have that amoral perspective. And instead, we need a humanitarian perspective to be advocated for by our government. That's what we have come to expect in this country. And over the last few decades, we don't expect it anymore. We expect the government, in way too many cases, we have seen it side with those who would put money before the good and the welfare of the American people.
Aren't you running against someone who would support everything you've just said? He has always voted the environment, and he's always voted for health care. He is a standout liberal in the Congress. He represents a very liberal district, which pretty much backs everything you've just said.
That is very true, and Congressman Waxman deserves a lot of appreciation and respect. And when it comes to issues, absolutely, most of the time I would be absolutely with him. In fact, the only major issue I can think of where we disagree is that I do not believe that we should be using nuclear energy for domestic purposes at all. Other than that, you're right. But you know what, Larry? Congressman Waxman knows a lot of things because he's been in Congress for 38 years. But I feel I know a lot of things because I haven't been in Congress for 38 years. I understand the value in any system of institutional memory. But but there's also great value in fresh ideas. And I believe that the House of Representatives, it's called the People's House. It's supposed to be the house of what's happening now. And I believe that there's a larger perspective, not just on specific issues, but on the larger conversation that Americans are trying to have and yearn to have within politics, that I feel I can contribute this way. And I don't think that's going to come from the status quo, even the best of the status quo, which certainly Congressman Waxman is.
Now, you know, Marianne, as a very intelligent, bright woman, you're up against it here, running as an independent against someone who's so well founded in his district and has been there for so long. You know you got a long road to hoe here, don't you?
Well, what meaningful effort in life is easy? And I think that while, you know, when it comes to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and all of that, they have institutional power. But there's something even stronger than that, and that's people power. So I think that, you know, it's up to the people of my district and the people around the country who might want to contribute to this campaign to decide. It's, you know, it's supposed to be one person, one vote. Not $1, one vote. So people represented by institutional power and the money that it brings and all of that, that's good, but it's a contest. And I think that if my campaign resonates with enough people, that they are going to be responding to the campaign itself, not as a rejection of Congressman Waxman, but as a statement of a feeling that what is necessary in this country right now is a new conversation. A new conversation. More is required. And that's what this campaign stands for.
But you're going to need money to run too, aren't you?
Of course I'm going to need money, and I hope the people will send me money. But I think that when you talk about the institutional power that other candidates will have, basically what that represents is not only groups that have already come together in support of a particular candidate, but also the money that is provided by political parties. You know, if everybody who believes in the values that I stand for in my campaign, no matter where they live in the United States, sends me $5, then I will be able to be competitive in this race. And I believe that the power of the ideas is the most powerful factor of all.
The district encompasses Beverly Hills and where else?
Oh, Malibu, Venice, Santa Monica, Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, all the way down through El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, all the way down through Rancho Palos Verdes, up Topanga Canyon and Calabasas. I mean, it's a big district, and it's an exciting district. You know, I think California, when you talk about a district like this in California, it's some of the most creative people in our country. If any district should be represented by the most cutting-edge new kind of thinking, it should be this one. And I don't want to just go to Congress to represent the interests of the people of this district. I want to represent the consciousness of the people of this district. America needs to get going. We've been like in a stupor. And I think the majority of us realize that when it comes to the functioning of our government and the democratic franchise, we are going in a wrong direction. And we need a new conversation to start. And out of that conversation, a new political force field. And that's what I hope this campaign will be. I hope that we will win. And if we win, that will be even more of an opportunity to spread the platform of these ideas so that independent candidates and other Democrats and Republicans running on these ideas will be running throughout the country. We need to do this, and I think we need to do it quickly.
You said you want to establish a new cabinet post, the United States Department of Peace. What would that department do?
Well, that is a bill that is already being sponsored currently by Barbara Lee and others in the House of Representatives. Right now, a cabinet-level Department of Peace would be in the executive branch of the government, and it would give the opportunity for the president to receive consult regarding nonviolent problem-solving options to both domestic and international conflict. And what this department would do on probably 2 or 3% of what is currently our defense budget is scour the country for the best practices having to do with the articulation and the practice of nonviolent options. We can't just wait till violence erupts, Larry, and continue to build more prisons and bomb more people. We have to dismantle. We have to dismantle the beginning roots of violence. You know, President Franklin Roosevelt wrote that we need to do more than end war. We need to end the beginnings of all wars. And a lot of the wars that are externalized on our streets and around our world begin with wars inside people, begin with economic conditions and social conditions that make people so desperate that it is reasonable to assume that desperate behavior will result. So we need a far more holistic, a far more expanded conversation about the roots of violence, and the president should receive that information. That's why it's important that a department on peace building be part of the executive branch of the government.
I know you're very close to Oprah Winfrey. In fact, we had you on when she had her whole radio slew of stars. You were one of them. Do you expect her to endorse you?
I don't have an expectation of anything from anyone. I received a lovely letter from her on a personal level. What she will do publicly, of course, is her own decision, and I respect whatever she decides. I'm so grateful for what she has done for me already. You know, I'm not... you know, I would never presume or expect, but I'm very grateful for her friendship. I can tell you that.
I would imagine you support marriage equality, the legalization of marijuana, immigration reform.
Absolutely. In fact,
how about that thin line? Go ahead.
Well, I remember talking on your program about marriage equality years ago, actually. So yes, I support that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
We only have a limited time. That thin line between national security and privacy. Where do you stand? We certainly have threats to our national security. Isn't that a thin line?
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably not as thin as our government is making it appear. I'm very concerned about the NSA surveillance. I'm very concerned about what I consider to be an egregious overreach of the government into our private lives. And I need a lot. I'm absolutely skeptical in a healthy way about just a blanket carte blanche permission given to this government at any time. You know, once you, what are we going to do with that? When does that ever end? Because when are they ever going to say, oh, we're safe now? So no, I would be taking a very skeptical and very vigilant eye on issues of privacy. Because to me, an issue of my privacy and knowing that my government is not looking into everything I do, everything I read, that is part of my security. You know, there are a lot of security issues, not just invading armies. You know, anything that is this constant chipping away at our democratic freedoms, to me, that is a threat to democracy, every bit as much as the idea of an army that might invade our shores. So let's be real clear, enemies can be within as well as without.
We'll be following it closely, Marianne. We'll wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianne. Marianne Williamson.